Recent reports have revealed that no less than 215 trans patients have been denied HRT by their GPs. What's more is, out of those prescribed HRT by an NHS gender specialist, 3/4 of them were already on said HRT when they were denied, with half of them having been so for more than 5 years. To make matters worse, some doctors cited personal beliefs as their justification for denying said essential medications. These facts and many more are part of a shocking update to last week's video, as we'll discuss in a second. But first, a quick content warning for the following: transmisia, gatekeeping, and medical violence. If our work has helped you, please consider supporting us via Patreon so that we can keep the channel running. You can also help us by liking, commenting, and sharing our work on social media. Hi there, my name is Ethel Thurston, she, her, they, them, and we're here to talk about a recent update to the story covered in our video, Doctors Strip Trans Patients of HRT. Said video looked into 2 letters received by trans adults, informing them that they were going to be stripped of their HRT. It should be noted, one patient had been on HRT for more than 5 years, and the other was on HRT for reasons other than being trans. On top of the letters, there were 3 other trans people who commented about having had these same or similar experiences. We then discussed the likely cause, which was a policy update introduced by the Royal College of General Practitioners, or RCGP, an institution that is known to be anti-trans. That is why they promoted a non-scientific report written by an anti-trans zealot, specifically chosen for said report because they're an anti-trans zealot, by a government which then boasted about stacking the UK health system with such anti-trans zealots. The RCGP then came forward, confirming that they were the source of the issue, claiming that this hadn't been their intention, yet offering no real apology or course of action to fix the issue they'd caused. So we covered quite a bit in said video, which was then published on the 19th of October. Now, unbeknownst to me at the time, on that very same day, various trans and general queer organisations, such as Transactual and Queer AF, published a series of articles and reports, bringing to light the facts that no less than 215 trans people reported having been denied their HRT since the start of 2023. Full disclosure, I only came to find out about this on the 22nd. Again, I published our video on the 19th and then followed that up with a second video about conversion torture on the 20th, after which I took a day's break, seeing as I don't get weekends off like many people. That's why I was shocked to discover the news on the 22nd when I came across a thread put together by Jamie Wareham, one of Queer AF's founders. Said thread linked the Queer AF article, which in turn linked the Transactual report. Reason I'm explaining all this is because it left me with an incredibly short turnaround on this video, so there might not be quite as much analysis as usual, but I still felt this was important to follow up on. So, without further ado, let's move on to the report itself. It opens by noting that they first caught wind of the facts that trans people prescribed HRT had been denied said prescription by their GP sometime in May. To assess what was happening, Transactual opened a survey, which is where the results from today's report come from. They found at least 215 trans people reported having been denied HRT by their GP, of which 56, so about a quarter, had been referred for HRT by an NHS gender specialist, meaning the entire process was internal. These people were the focus of the report, hence all statistics going forward will centre on these 56 individuals, the majority of which, 48, come from England specifically, with 5 being from Scotland and 3 from Wales. As mentioned at the start, of those 56, only 15 of them, so about a quarter, were seeking a new prescription. That's to say, 3/4 were already on a pre-existing prescription and were merely looking to continue. What makes this particularly disturbing is the fact that 25 of them, so just shy of half, had been on HRT for more than 5 years, whilst only 11, so about 1/5, had been on HRT for less than a year. These were people largely adjusted to life on HRT. To make matters even worse, 8 out of those 56 had undergone surgical procedures to remove their gonads, meaning that their bodies produce negligible quantities of sex hormones. This is a problem, considering that sex hormones are essential for both hard and soft tissue maintenance, meaning those who have been denied said hormones are now at risk of extreme osteoporosis and muscle wastage. As a personal side note, this, by the way, is the main reason I have zero desire to undergo bottom surgery. I'm genuinely terrified of being in a situation where I can no longer produce said hormones and have been denied them either by shortages caused by global instability and climate catastrophe, or medical violence, like we're seeing here. I've looked into people who have been forced into such situations, such as black intersex athlete Annette Negasa, and that's a fear I don't know if I'll ever be rid of. It is that horrific, and my heart breaks for those 8 people in particular. I can only imagine the terror they must be experiencing in being forced into such a situation. I really cannot overstress just how dangerous this is. Moving on to the next chapter, we come to the reasons given by GPs for the denial of said care, keeping in mind that a GP could cite multiple reasons. 24 stated that it was due to a lack of competence, 10 cited a lack of integrated care board/health board policy on shared care with NHS gender clinics, 8 cited the lack of policy stating that they must, 7 cited personal beliefs, 7 cited that they're not paid to prescribe HRT, 6 cited the RCGP telling them that they didn't have to, 6 cited the lack of primary care network policy on shared care with NHS gender clinics, 5 cited health concerns, and 5 cited that they would if an endocrinologist says they should, keeping in mind that all 56 in this sample were referred by a gender specialist clinic, and none of the people reported additional health concerns in the lead up to said care being denied. There were a few other reasons cited, including that the GP didn't recognize the gender identity clinic, which is a shocking admission of incompetence, considering that they literally have the internet at their fingertips. This to me sounds like a cover for the actual reason. Speaking of, something that needs to be kept in mind is the fact that just because a doctor cites one or more reasons for denying said essential medications, that doesn't mean they can't be hiding other reasons or even their main reason. For example, the argument that the RCGP has told them that they don't have to prescribe said medications isn't really an argument for denying them, it's a handy excuse that lends said doctor plausible deniability. It's likely that many of these doctors are objecting on grounds of personal beliefs, they're just being smart in not saying it. Yet the fact that 7 of them, that's more than 1 in 10, felt comfortable enough in the current climate to cite personal beliefs as a reason to abandon a patient's care is worrying. It says a lot about the sort of anti-trans climate that has been created by groups such as the RCGP, which, again, was deliberately stacked with anti-trans zealots by the previous Tory government, an effort that Keir Starmer's Red Tories seem hell-bent on maintaining. The next chapter then goes on to note that out of the 56 who have been refused HRT, 25 of them have had their prescription cancelled, before going on to list the various claimed reasons for doing so. I'm not sure as to what the distinction here actually is. The section doesn't do a great job of explaining itself and how it differs to the 56 who were refused HRT. I'm not sure if this means 25 out of the 56 refused to do a 6-month bridging period like we saw in the last video, whether the other 31 have managed to reverse the situation, or whether the other 31 have found a new GP. Perhaps it's a mix of things, I don't know. As such, I don't have much to say on said chapter. The report then goes into regional differences before giving us a timeline breakdown, showing how the majority of cases took place between April and October of 2024. I'm not going to go into detail on that as it's not the focus of this channel, but if you'd like to know more, do follow the link in the reference list found in the video transcript linked down below. The report then ends with some key points, all of which we've covered in the video. So things are a hell of a lot worse than we previously thought, and that's before we even consider the remaining 159 patients that were denied HRT, yet weren't included in this report. They're also far more complicated in that the BMA potentially shares a portion of the blame. Note that this section is not based on the report, but rather something that was pointed out to me on Reddit, and that's the fact that all this might only be happening due to collective action organized by the BMA. As was pointed out to me, 98% of the British Medical Association voted to take some form of collective action over poor working conditions and lack of funding. They can't strike as GPs, but they can do other things. And one of those things is turn away what is considered specialist referred aftercare, seeing as GPs don't receive a portion of the funds allocated to that specific issue. And this can be seen in a template letter put out by the BMA on the 8th of August, which reads very similar to the two letters seen in the previous video. So it seemed pretty damning, which I'm not going to deny was devastating. Even though there's clearly no intention here to single out and target trans people, for the BMA to have done something that nonetheless harms us during a period in which many trans people in the UK view them to be our final advocate would have hurt a lot. Which is why I'm glad to say that this doesn't seem to be the case. The reason I think that is the aforementioned timeline put out by TransActual. Said collective action was only voted on towards the start of August 2024. Yet, as we can see, far from increasing, the number of trans patients being denied HRT actually began decreasing back in August, with the hottest period regarding said denials taking place between April start and July end. This is the very opposite of what we'd expect to see had the BMA's motion had an impact. Therefore, whilst a really unfortunate coincidence, and I'd ask the BMA to consider issuing a notice on the needs of a marginalised community under attack, I don't think the BMA shares blame in this instance. At least not personally, but I still wanted to bring this to your attention so that you could make up your own minds. It's important to discuss these things openly rather than dismiss them out of hand. Though what do you think? What are your thoughts on the number of trans people impacted? Do you have anything to say to the doctors citing the justifications listed earlier? How do we navigate a health system that is seemingly never ending in its hostility towards us? Did you notice something I missed? If so, be sure to let me know in the comments down below. And if you appreciate what we do here and want to help keep us running, please consider becoming one of our wonderful patrons who make our work possible. You can also make a one-time donation via PayPal or Super Thanks on YouTube. On that note, we'd just like to thank the following people: Matthew Kovac, Hannah Banghart, Goddess Alita, Sosh Daniels, Flynn, and Higgins the Seagull. And for myself, Adita and Levi, take care now.